Night after night, the human camp continued to burn against the frozen darkness. Whenever a hunt succeeded and an animal was brought back to the fire, the scent of blood, fat, and broken bone traveled far beyond the people gathered around it. The wind carried those smells across open plains, through forests, and along the frozen valleys of the Ice Age. To any predator nearby, they were impossible to ignore. The first wolf had already learned what they meant. Food could sometimes be found at the edge of the camp, but only by waiting, watching, and keeping a careful distance from the humans. Yet the scent did not belong to one wolf alone. Before long, other wolves began to notice the fire. Some approached cautiously, remaining far beyond the circle of light. They watched the humans move through the camp, listened to the noise around the carcass, and disappeared before coming any closer. Others were driven forward by hunger. They crossed the open ground too quickly, hoping to seize whatever they could before the humans reacted. A few may have shown little hesitation at all. But a human camp was not an unprotected source of food. These people hunted large and dangerous animals together. They carried stone weapons and spears, controlled fire, and defended one another as a group. A wolf that came too close could be met with shouting, burning branches, thrown stones, or a sudden charge from several hunters. The reckless animals were driven away. Some never returned. The wolves that reacted with immediate aggression faced even greater danger. An animal that threatened a hunter, entered the sleeping area, or attempted to take stored meat could quickly be injured or killed. But not every wolf behaved in the same way. Some remained hidden in the darkness and waited until the people had finished eating. They learned where unwanted bones were discarded and when movement inside the camp began to slow. Only then did they move forward, collect what remained, and retreat before anyone considered them a serious threat. They were not necessarily the strongest wolves. They were not always the fastest. What set them apart was their ability to remain calm. Even within the same species, individuals differ. Some are more fearful, some are more aggressive. Others are more curious, patient, or capable of adapting their behavior when circumstances change. For most of a wolf's life, these differences may have had little importance, but near a human camp, they could determine whether an animal found food, fled forever, or died while trying to take too much. The most aggressive wolves were likely to provoke a violent response. The most fearful would never come close enough to benefit. But wolves capable of tolerating the presence of humans without attacking or panicking gained access to a new and unusually reliable source of calories. That advantage mattered. Hunting was dangerous and uncertain. Wolves could spend hours pursuing prey and still fail. Injuries could prevent them from hunting again, while prolonged hunger could weaken an entire pack. Food left behind by humans required far less energy to obtain. A wolf that repeatedly reached those remains could survive periods when other animals went hungry. And the longer it survived, the greater its chance of reproducing. Over many generations, wolves that were calmer around humans may have been more likely to live long enough to produce offspring. If some of the behavioral traits that allowed them to tolerate human activity were inherited, their young might also have been slightly less fearful, less reactive, or better able to live near the camps. No human needed to understand genetics. No wolf needed to choose a different future. Natural selection could begin through nothing more than repeated differences in survival. The process would have been slow. It did not transform wolves within a few nights or even within a single lifetime. But each generation could shift the balance slightly. Animals suited to this new environment remained. Those that could not tolerate it were pushed away or removed. The human camp had become more than a place where food was discarded. It had become a new ecological niche. Along its outer boundary, certain wolves could survive without relying entirely on the hunt. They could follow traveling groups, feed from abandoned remains, and learn the rhythms of people who unknowingly supported their existence. Humans were also learning to recognize the differences between them. One wolf might rush toward the meat and refuse to retreat. Another might circle the camp and become aggressive when challenged. But some waited beyond the firelight, took only what had been left behind, and disappeared without threatening anyone. They were still wild predators. They were not pets, companions, or members of the human group, but they were becoming more predictable. That predictability may have changed how people responded. A wolf that consistently kept its distance might be tolerated, while an animal that crossed the boundary was driven away. Human reactions therefore created another pressure, rewarding caution without anyone deliberately attempting to breed or tame the animals. This was not domestication in the form we recognize today. It was the beginning of selection. For generations, the wolves best able to live beside humans gained food, survived difficult seasons, and had more opportunities to reproduce. Their descendants inherited a world in which the glow of a distant campfire no longer meant only danger. It could also mean survival. We often imagine that humans began the story by choosing wolves, but the earliest step may have happened in the opposite direction. Long before people deliberately selected an animal, certain wolves may already have selected a life near people. And with each generation that remained beside the fire, the wild population at the edge of the camp began to follow a path of its own.